This is the Out of Time Film Podcast, where your hosts Tom and John discuss everything from blockbuster films to TV and games like there's no tomorrow.
Hello and welcome to the Out of Time Film Podcast. My name is Tom, and as always, I'm joined with my co-host John. And this week we are talking about Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
I knew one of those days you're gonna mess up.
Damn it!
Yes, but it's okay. It could be one of those cold opens again. But anyway, yes, welcome. We are going to talk about Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Yes, this is the film that came out. This is one of the films. Yes, exactly, John. But this is a really exciting time because we are soon seeing the anime version, which is really exciting because the whole Scott Pilgrim film was adapted from a graphic novel series. So it's going to be really interesting how they integrated that from the film, but also from the graphic novels into the anime. So that's really cool. That's exciting stuff.
Yeah, that's really, really going to be great that they're bringing back the cast and that they're bringing back the same creative team, but they're doing it in a different style with the comic book illustrations. Yeah. I genuinely think that the upcoming anime could be on par with the movie, which I think is already absolutely amazing. Scott Pilgrim versus the World, full spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it. And let's be honest, if you haven't seen it, you really should. Briefly explain the plot for those who don't know.
So, Scott Pilgrim meets Ramona and instantly falls in love with her. But when he meets one of her exes at a band competition, he realizes that he has to deal with all 7 of her exes to woo her.
So, tell me a bit about Scott Pilgrim. When was the first time that you watched this movie? Do you remember?
Right. Yes, I remember this actually. Ages ago. I went to your house and we were
Did
just
I show
bored.
you?
Yeah, you showed me this,
Nice.
but I'll tell you the whole story. So we were just bored. We were like, what can we do? And then you were like, have you seen Scott Pilgrim? And then meanwhile, I was just completely oblivious. I was like, what's that? And then you showed me the graphic novel that you had. You had like 1 volume of it, I guess. And it was just completely mind-blowing instantly from the beginning, you know, when they go 1, 2, 3, 4, and it just hits you with the sound, with the cinematography, and you just completely dive into this world that is just crazy, video game inspired. I was just like, I'm just witnessing a masterpiece, and I was just completely mesmerized, but also just mind blown that these are films that are just so incredible. And it was my first Edgar Wright film, I believe.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, it makes sense that I showed you because this, for the longest time, was my go-to movie to show people. Like, whenever I was bored with friends, whenever we couldn't decide what to watch, if they hadn't seen Scott Pilgrim, it was a no-brainer because to me, this movie it has it all. I don't think this is my first Edgar Wright movie, and we did Last Night in Soho when it came out. So we've talked about Edgar Wright before, but truly, what he brings to this movie is unlike anything else. There are so many different voices in the comic book movie world, but what he did with this movie is something unlike I've ever seen before. I don't even know where to begin with how fantastic. I mean, just every moment is shot and edited to perfection. All of the transitions, you have the classic Edgar Wright whip pans, and there's some really great examples of physical comedy. One of my favorites is where Knives comes to Scott's house and Wallace opens the door and so Knives is like, is Scott here? And Wallace is like, you know what? He closes the door and then behind him, Scott dives out of the window. He's like, he just left. And that's practical. Like, this movie, they thought about every single detail, like to the point where the actors were told not to blink in every shot, so it felt like a comic book. And it does feel like a comic book, and I think the whole thing is so purposefully built and crafted and chiseled to perfection. I love it.
Yeah, it's just so awesome to watch all the fighting sequences. There's some really funny ones as well. That's one of my favorite. That Texas switch, you're thinking, is that Michael Cera jumping out the window? And I love that. And there's so many great ones. Like, there's a great behind the scenes blooper as well when Scott throws the box behind him and put it in the bin and it landed. And you can see that behind the scenes, they actually took it loads of time to put it in the bin. Like, they throw it behind it in there. So that's pretty cool what they've done for this film. You can tell they had so much fun. And you got an amazing cast. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, amazing as Ramona. And there's some really funny dialogue as well, like when she was reading out all the tea names. That was just brilliant.
Have you seen the cast reunion?
Sorry, I'm just drinking my coffee. I was like, yes, I have. I was like, Yes, I have. I watched the table read, and that was so much fun as well. Like you get
Yeah.
to learn about that, and she somehow remembers the whole
Yeah.
tea. It's crazy. She's
It's mad. Like the whole cast has so much chemistry. They are so perfect. It is not a surprise in the slightest that they brought back every single cast member in every single role because they are all so perfect and they're irreplaceable. Like Kieran Culkin as Wallace is hilarious the whole time, and the whole dynamic that Scott has with the rest of the band members and Sex Bob Arm, and Jason Schwartzman as the villain. I just can't imagine anybody in this movie doing anything else, and they are all hamming it up so much, and they're all giving it the exact right amount of sincerity but also comedic timing. Like Chris Evans as Lucas Lee, that might be his best performance ever. He is just taking it to another level. There are just so many fantastic moments. Like where he's like, "You really don't know about the League of Evil Exes?" And he's like, "No." And he's like, "Oh, that's cool, man. We'll get a beer." And he punched him. He's like, "Boom!" Like, I just love all of those little moments. The characters come alive and it feels so surreal, but at the same time, so very grounded. Like they feel like real characters put into these insane situations. I love it.
Yeah, and it's just over the top as well. It really inspired a lot of manga and anime situations as well. Like with Matthew Patel, he's just over the top. It's just so funny. He's just like trying to be this cool guy and like, you want to go against me? And it's just so anime as well. And Chris Evans is one of my favorite lines is he's on the movie set and he just looks at his phone just like, that's kind of hilarious.
Yes. Oh, this movie is also
so good. It's filled with so many good jokes as well.
Yeah.
And lots of references to video games as well. There was Legends of Zelda at the beginning. You can hear the theme in the kitchen. I absolutely love that. And you get to instantly know the characters with their personality, with the blocks and stuff. And I just feel like, yeah, that's instantly, what they like. So,
Yes.
yeah.
I love that kind of stuff. Like, it tells you exactly what you need to know immediately. Like, when Scott is introducing the band and he's like, "This is Stephen Stills, he's the talent. This is Kim, she's a drummer." And I love that kind of stuff. And the video game influences are all over the place. Every time someone dies, they become a pile of money. And even at the beginning,
cool.
Universal logo is in, like, it's pixelated and it's got that kind of video game vibe. And also with the one-up life that Scott gets at the end, considering it's based off a comic book, and I have read the comic book. I've read the first two, I think, but I never did the whole thing. So I don't really know how many of those influences are directly from the comic book, but I love that it's bringing in all these different styles and all these different versions. There's this whole sequence where it's kind of a riff on sitcoms with like a live audience where Scott enters his house and there's like this canned laughter this whole time. Like, they just go for all these ridiculous things. Like what you were saying of Matthew Patel before, he has an almost Bollywood style dance number where he's talking about like his fireballs and his demon hipster chicks. Like, it's all just, again, like so fantastically thought out and so layered. And I really hope that they bring that to the anime as well, because I can't imagine Scott Pilgrim without all those different styles and all those different like variations. It's so many things. It's a comic book movie, it's a video game movie, it's a love story, and all those things really work together. It's even like an underdog band story. All those elements come together really nicely, and the movie is so quotable. There are so many lines from the very opening of "Once upon a time in the not so far away land of Toronto, Canada, Scott Pilgrim was dating a high schooler." Like, that stuff, even from the very opening, are just so memorable and so fantastic. And oh man, watching this movie just brings out such a joy in me because it's so fun the whole time.
It is such a hilarious film just to go into, and it's so much fun. Just thinking back about like all the funny moments as well. When Scott was talking to Knives on the way home to the snowy Toronto, Knives was like, where do you live? And then it just pans to this massive house, Scott's house, and you're thinking, is there something to it? But then it just pans to his place that he lives in, this bunker. It looks like a bunker. It's just like this very small place where he's living with Wallace.
Yeah, literally just across the street from where he grew up.
Yeah, it's just... And the soundtrack as well. Oh my God, the soundtrack.
Man.
Oh, yes. instantly from the beginning, you were like, I am in with this punk rock music as well, deeply inspired by video games as well. So that's cool. Like they blend the genres together. And the cool thing about the fight scenes as well, I don't know if they're inspired by the boss fights in the comic book series. One of my favorite is the fight against Todd. That's a really great one as
Yes.
well. You get to see this great character dynamic between Mona and Scott, learning about each other, with the different exes. And it's just so funny. It's just over the top. 7 evil exes, great. And there's a great scene with oh yeah, I just remember the joke with Todd being Superman. He said he's vegan, and then that's how he gets his powers. But then there was the vegan police.
The vegan police.
Oh my god, this is great. He's like reporting him about the crimes that which stuff he ate aren't vegan, so like chicken. Chicken is
Yeah,
vegan,
that's
and
such
then he
a
gets
funny scene.
yeah, I love that.
You
Yeah.
once were vegan, now you will be gone. Vegan? Like it's so fantastic.
It's so fantastic. And the scene transitions. Again, Edgar Wright knows how to do scene transitions. There's no rhythm wasted. Like you're instantly going through this journey. And yeah, no scene wasted as well. You're just like in this journey of meeting these crazy characters. And there's one thing that I looked at the cast list as well is Bill Hader. I did not know he was the voice.
Of
But
who?
the narrator.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
He's the narrator.
Scott is well aware that that his last haircut was at this time. Yeah, I love those moments when everything goes dark and then the narrator will jump in and be like, Scott is well aware that she dumped him. It was brutal. And he's like, it was mutual. It wasn't. I love those kind of moments that,
Yeah.
again, like they give us so much information through stuff like the narration and stuff like when they introduce the apartment, they come through and they show all the good stuff in the apartment, all the tidy stuff and all the new stuff. That's all Wallace's. All the bad stuff, the piles of clothes
Yeah.
on the floor, the crappy posters, those are Scott's. And this movie really builds this identity of a guy who really is this dickhead who plays everyone and is really selfish, and he needs to learn the power of, they kind of say like at the end that he learns the power of self-respect, but I think potentially the film misses out on the fact that really him finally being kind to people and finally admitting what he's done wrong, that's not necessarily self-respect. It's more like ownership of his bad deeds.
Yeah, I wish there was that arc as well, like kind of to people as well. Like you could see it throughout the story. I mean, it's kind of shown with scenes with Ramona as well. But yeah, again, I wish there was like a stronger way of that. But that's just a small problem with that. There's some great stuff that triumphs over that small thing. You come to the realization that Scott's not a good person as well. You're just like, oh, he's not as kind to everybody as well. You do get to see that character arc somewhere in the story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
apparently it's more in the graphic novel, and I would hope that it's a bigger part of the TV show too. And if I had one criticism about this movie, it would be the character journeys. They don't feel like they quite know where they're ending. Like the ending is quite controversial. A lot of people believe that Scott should have ended up with knives, and that was the original ending that they shot, where after defeating Gideon and encountering Nega Scott gets with knives and Ramona leaves. But I think that it does make more sense that Scott would end up with Ramona, since the whole movie was about their love. But also, I do kind of think that the characters do kind of get away with some of their more heinous treatment of each other quite a lot, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Again, this is a movie that's focusing on Scott going against the 7 evil exes. That can feel a bit overwhelming as well. And you feel like we want to focus on, like his character arc as well. You do get to see that, but it is overarching as well. So it's just not as like episodic, like, oh, he's actually changing, but he's like kind of slowly building up to that in the ending. I'm looking at like all the trivia stuff that was in the film as well. So like the 4 cast members that made up the band spent several weeks learning how to play together as a band. Wow. They had to learn their instruments from scratch, and Mike Cera had to dumb down his bass in order not to outshine his bandmates, so he actually knew how to play bass.
That's so cool. I love all of the musical sequences. They are so cool. There's nothing that gets me quite as hyped as the opening scene where Kim yells, "We are Stacked Babon, 1, 2, 3, 4," and then you get Launchpad McQuack, working title, and the camera starts to slowly pull away from them, and the floor is getting longer and longer as the credits start to roll, and then we get the title drop, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and then we go into this kind of neon, insane landscape with all of the different cast members and different graphics that represent each one as this insane guitar riff with the drums and the bass are playing the whole time. I love that. There's so many cool songs in this movie.
Yeah, there were so many cool songs as well. There was one, it was the musical fight with the sound being like the animals. That scene. Who was it against? Like these two guys.
Yes, against the
band.
Katianagi twins.
Yes, that's it. And again, this is like over the top as well. And it's just like using music. It's actually a prominent thing as well, music. And they actually use music to help fight against X's. It's just so much fun as well.
Yeah, and I love also how all the different X's have their own vibe. Like Matthew Patel is kind of like a pirate-esque kind of thing. And as I said, he has this whole Bollywood sequence and he's kind of got like his magical abilities. And then Lucas Lee is like this kind of like hardened like actor, skater dude. And then Todd is very much like he's quite jockey, but also he's got that kind of band stuff. And then Roxy is a very kind of punk, and the Katinagi twins are the silent but deadly kind of musicians. And then you have Gideon, who is super kind of over the top and super confident. And I can't get over how good the whole final act of this movie is, when Scott goes in and he loses so hard, but then he has his extra life, and so he gets to do it all again. And everyone teams up to fight Gideon and all Gideon's henchmen. And Sex Bob-omb have that moment where Kim's like, "We are Sex Bob-omb and we are here to watch Scott Pilgrim kick your teeth in." Like, it's so great. And I think that Jason Schwartzman gives such a fantastic performance as... I think I've decided that Jason Schwartzman, apart from Ryan Gosling, might be my favorite actor, because everything that he
That's
is in,
understandable.
he plays every role to perfection, and he just loses himself. Like, there's no Jason Schwartzman role that isn't incredibly memorable for every single reason. Like, I absolutely love him in this movie, the way that he's like kind of like so confident, and he's like, "Do you know how long it took me to get all the contact information for all the exes so I could form this stupid league? 2 hours. 2 hours." Like, that's so funny. Oh, and he's like, "You made me swallow my gum. That's gonna be in my digestive tract for 7 years." Like, that's so funny. I don't know if it's 7 years, but that's so funny. Like,
8 years.
Yeah, 8 years. There we go. He's just fantastic.
Yeah, you get to see some character moments as well. Again, Chris Evans completely just being this serious guy who's just like, oh, trying to be this bro guy, like he's just being over the top and just using the skateboard. It's just so funny.
There's
just
that
love
great
the-
moment when Scott's like, "Can you do a thingy?" And he's like, "You want me to do that?" And it's like, there are girls watching, and he just like he just flicks over for like a single second, and it's so funny. And there's a great moment as well when Wallace gives him his board and he's like, "Hey, big fan." And Lucas is like, "Why wouldn't you be?" That's so funny.
You get to see small character moments as well that are just so good. Like Aubrey Plaza's Julie in the coffee shop. She's great as well across the movie. She's just like this.
She keeps on just popping up.
Yeah, it just pops out the story, and it's just so funny as well. She just has her time, and then kind of helps with Scott as well. But she's like this self-realized character in this world, and she's like, there's nothing she can do about it. But she's in this.
And Anna Kendrick as Stacy. Like, I love that every time Scott does something, she calls him straight away. And he's like, "How do you know?" And it's like, Wallace isn't even conscious. Like, those moments are so fantastic. And of course, Knives, the fact that her heart's been broken so much by Scott, and she kind of goes into this kind of revenge story where at the end she's like wants to fight Ramona. Like, that stuff is so great. And I think she grows and becomes the most mature at the end when she kind of realizes that she's too cool for Scott. And it's true, that stuff is so fantastic. And of course, when Todd punches her and he punched the highlights out of her hair, like that stuff is all so heightened and again just memorable. Every single character, every single moment, even the small characters like Wallace's boyfriend who's like, "So you didn't kiss her? Are you gay?" Like, every single character, every single moment, it's all so memorable. And I know there are haters of this movie, and I really don't understand it. I think that it's such a funny and brilliantly devised and made movie that, it might not kind of criticize some of its characters as well as it should, but it's also really, really well done. And it's such a joy. I don't understand how
It's
anyone
cinema.
can like it.
That's what
It
he's
is
saying.
cinema.
It's cinema.
It's the
Yes.
best. Yeah.
I wonder if Scorsese actually watched this film.
Of course he did.
That was just
I
a long
mean,
pause. I just love that long pause. I had
it's
this
like, yeah,
realization.
he
I was
must
like,
have.
what films does he watch? It's just so funny to me. Like, what films would he watch if he watched Scott Pilgrim vs. World? Anyway, I just love this film. It's just a film that you cannot be bored with. There's so much memorable dialogue that you feel like you want to memorize the whole entire film. The writing is just excellent as well. I wonder if that's been inspired by the graphic novels.
When I read the first couple of graphic novels, I realized that a lot of the movie is word for word the same as the graphic novel. So yeah,
Oh
like
wow.
I think we can also expect a lot of the most memorable lines to also be in the TV show because it is from the graphic novel.
Yeah, and you can really tell that it's just made with so much passion as well. And it's a really different Edgar Wright film from, like, when you look at all his films, you've seen Hot Fuzz and all that. There's a quite similar, you can see that with the transition, you can see that with the direction he does. But from this is such a different film, but it's also Edgar Wright as well. You know what I mean? Like, you can see it
Oh
and you're just
yeah.
like, you've seen Hot Fuzz, you've seen Shaun of the Dead or Baby Driver, but this is just so much energy, so much fun.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just so good. It does really work with Edgar Wright's direction with his comedy as well. So yeah.
Yeah, what I love about Edgar Wright, and this goes for every single amazing director, is that none of their films feel the same. Like every single one of Edgar Wright's movies are different, but also they all have his signature style. And so, like they still all feel like Edgar Wright pieces. Even Last Night in Soho, which is wildly different in many ways, it still feels like Edgar
Way
Wright.
different, yeah.
But like they all carry that style. And I think that Scott Pilgrim is you can see why Marvel wanted him to make Ant-Man after
Yeah,
Scott
definitely.
Pilgrim, for instance.
Yeah.
But I guess he was too good for them.
Yeah, I can't believe this film is like 2 hours. It doesn't feel like 2 hours. You just
It
feel
really
like
goes by real fast.
it's just the pacing that is so good. It's just, you feel like you're on this roller coaster. You're on it for like 30 seconds. That's what I felt like through this entire film. You're just like, wow, I miss it already. I want to watch it
Yeah.
again. Yeah,
I really hope that the TV show, which we are going to cover when it's finished, I hope the TV show kind of gives us our weekly dose of Scott Pilgrim in the
Yeah.
best way. Well, actually, it's Netflix, so I'm not sure if it is going to be
Oh, they're gonna
weekly.
dump it all, aren't they?
Probably, yeah.
Hopefully, some anime shows in the future won't dump it at the same time, because weekly shows, they're cool because you feel like you want
Weekly
to.
is the way. Yeah,
Weekly
exactly.
is the way. You just building up series, or you're building up like excitement for anticipation for next week. It's like to be continued. Like, oh, and you're just like, oh my god, I want to watch next week. But if they dump it all again, I'm like, I could binge watch it, but I don't have the energy. Like, I don't like binge
Yes.
watching because you really want to take your time into this world. Again, I'm gonna keep talking about Cowboy Bebop, but that's exactly what I did. Like with Cowboy Bebop, I took so much time, like 3 months, to watch the entire show because I just felt like this is a show that I need to properly be immersed in, or not take it all in, because I feel like if you take it all in, you're going to miss every single emotional beat, or you just feel like that you're not ready for that world. So hopefully they'll do that for the anime as well, like weekly. Yes, please.
Yeah, let's hope so. But for now, what are you going to give Scott Pilgrim versus the World out of 10?
10.
10!
10. Yes.
Wow,
10.
fantastic. I'm going to go with 9.
Very excited for this entire season of animation as well. Hopefully, we'll talk about some other anime as well in the future. So, yeah. Cannot
Definitely.
wait for Scott Pilgrim vs. World on anime. Yeah.
Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, it shall be called.
Is it?
Yeah, it's called Scott Pilgrim Takes Off.
No. Why did I read it? Scott Pilgrim. What does this mean? Oh wow, it didn't do well at the box office. Why is it saying for? Anyway, never mind. Yeah.
Thank you everybody for listening. If you enjoyed it and you're listening on YouTube, you can like and subscribe if you want to see more. And if you're listening on Spotify, you can follow and give us a 5-star review if you think we're worthy. Next week we'll be doing The Marvels, the third MCU movie this year. We'll see how that goes. Will it be better than the original?
Did you see the Marvels thing? Like, the budget
Yeah,
kept changing.
God. Yes. So apparently it was one of the lowest MCU movies. It was like 130 million. And now apparently it's one of the highest. It's like 250 million. I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, I heard about it on Discussing Films. Discussing Films is great, by the way. If you want to get
Yeah.
into film news or film media, like what's happening around film, they're great, and they support the writer's strike as well.
Yeah, follow them on Twitter.
They are really reliable, but they sometimes go off bit of a track, with game news, but mostly film news as well. It's just pretty funny as well. But yeah.
Yeah, and you can send us an email at asktimefilmpod@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts on the Marvels, and you can ask us any questions, and we'll answer it right here on the podcast next week. And you can follow us on Instagram at asktimefilmpod to see incredible thumbnails from Zain Afzal, on Twitter for more thoughts from me, and TikTok to see edited clips, which are also on Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. And you can find links to all that in the description below. Thanks to Jones-Meyer for the excellent theme and Ronan Phillips for vocals as always. And I think that is everything.
Yeah, that's everything. Take what you're given.
Give nothing back.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.